no, no, I don't. I don't see enough of an awakening. I don't see enough of really attaching the right amount of regard to this because of just how important it is. You know, without a military, we're not a nation, and we're certainly not a nation without any kind of autonomy over our industry where we can make things and sell and get on so we can all have nice lives. So, you know, this is really the key thing here to what's happening to this country right here and now. And it's just simply not good enough for certain people to say, oh, well, you know, what's going on in the UK column, it's no good because people are picking up the phones and talking to their MPs and they don't know anything about it. Well, no, that's not the case. That's exactly what people have got to do, and they've got to do it more of and more quickly because our MPs have just not been doing their jobs. The very fact that they're naive and haven't been looking at this and assessed it just tells you just how bad things are in Parliament. The only instrument that we've got in this country to deal with this, it's been circumvented to such a degree that the MPs, and I can concur with this because I've done a lot of it, is that they, in the previous years, have just not wanted to know. Yeah. Please go away. You know, oh, you know, that's not important. I've even been told this morning by a Lord's PA, oh, well, military union, that's not important. That can just go in the trash bin with all the other charity applications that we get. So hang on a minute. How much money is involved with this? You're saying our military isn't important? Mm. This is a nonsense. And this is a current industrial Lord's PA telling me this morning that it's not important.
David, this is arrogance, ignorance, and treason in various proportions, depending on who you're speaking to. Let's come into the military from a different angle. This is something that I've been warning about for many years. We're now seeing the effects of it. And I've got a Mail headline. This is from a few days ago. And the headline is "Pictured Woman Officer Accused of Having Sex on Board a Nuclear-Armed Submarine is Identified as Naval Comrades Threaten to Resign." So the story here is this is one of UK's nuclear deterrent submarines, HMS Valiant, and sex on board, not just with anybody. This is the commanding officer, a gentleman called Stuart Armstrong, involved. The second in command has also been removed from the ship. And what does this represent? Well, if we come in and have a look at what the Royal Navy has said, this is their media team. According to the Royal Navy, the incident had not affected submarine operations. Now, I find this statement, I could say it's spin, but I actually think that this statement is just disgraceful, because this is the Royal Navy trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the general public as to what the real situation is. Let's go through some of the stuff. We've got a nuclear deterrent submarine where morale and discipline had completely broken down on board. If you have the commanding officer and the second in command involved in an incident like this, and you have 5 officers who had to threaten to resign unless something was done, this is a major collapse of morale and discipline on board that submarine. So not affected, it did not affect submarine operations. Who does the Royal Navy media team think the public are? Do they think we're idiots? This is mind-blowing, Mike. We've got the captain and the second in command are actually removed from the ship. That means that 2 new officers have to be flown in with all the cost, the time and money inconvenience. And the point is that when those 2 new officers get on board the ship, they have got to learn to work with the team that still exists on the ship. It's going to take them quite some time to bed in, learn the names, learn the people, learn who the good people are, who the people they've got to watch. So for the Royal Navy to simply try and brush this under the carpet, saying, oh, this is a minor incident, this is very, very dangerous stuff. But of course, this is social policy, which has now been brought into the Royal Navy. I'm going to give another example here. And if there's any ladies out there who think that I'm attacking the women in this case, that's absolutely not the case. What I'm doing is saying that we have an agenda which has been forced on the military, and we're now paying the price. So now we've got the roles reversed because we've got a female commander of a ship. She was removed for having an affair, a love affair as it's described, on board with a junior officer. This is how the Telegraph dealt with that. Shock horror. UK's first female warship commander accused of acting just like her male peers. So in this article, the whole incident is spun that what's good for the goose is good for the gander, totally ignoring the points that I've raised, that when these incidents happen, they represent an absolute major breakdown in discipline and morale on board the ships, and that affects the operational efficiency. Who wrote the article for the Telegraph? Dr. Brooks Magnanti, apart from her previous expertise as a call girl, she's also a forensic scientist, apparently.
So lots of defence experience.
Lots of defence experience. So the Telegraph, supposedly one of the upstanding British newspapers, would have this lady tell us what should be happening in the military. And before I ask David to comment on this, I'd just like to bring in this fantastic book. I've mentioned it several times over the years, the European Union Collective Enemy of Its Member States by Christopher Story. And in it is this template which is talking about how Western societies will be subverted. The information came from a man called Thomas Schumann. He was actually a defector from the KGB. But if we have a look at this one area, it says it all, because in security, what is to be done, the methods employed, penetration and demoralization of intelligence community, police, military, brackets homosexuality, women in the military, collectivism of military power and security. And what were the results on the right-hand side? Degradation of intelligence quality, military power and recruitment pool is effectively damaged, defensive lists, total unawareness of strategy, idolatry of cooperation, inability to act decisively and alone. And I think since that table was produced sometime prior to 1985, the original one goes back to 1970, this is an uncanny prediction of the damage that this new policy would have on the military. And of course, what this gentleman was warning the West about was that there were interests that were going to destroy society and particularly target the military. We're watching this in front of our eyes. David, this is not as simple as pointing a finger and saying this man is KGB, so this policy is coming in from Russia, because we know perfectly well that this social policy is being driven in by the world banking system.
Well, it's certainly being driven, and you know that you follow the money, you find policy, and then you find policy makers. So, I mean, let's go back to this to the matter at hand here. This is Her Majesty's atomic submarine in the Royal Navy. This is not a pub where people cavort. So that's the first thing everybody's got to bear in mind. This is not a public house where you just get a crush on the barmaid and you think, well, we'll have a go. This is an atomic submarine with nuclear weapons on board that does a vital job, where there are hundreds of people's lives at stake in the submarine and around it. So my understanding of this from one or two senior submariners that I've known is that first and foremost, this is a silent service. Absolutely silent, and it isn't, because this is breached into the media. So that's nice, isn't it? So what I'm going to qualify this as brand destruction.
Oh.
This is brand destruction of the Royal Navy, brand destruction of Her Majesty's Armed Services. And when you clump that all together with all the people that are being arrested and had up on charges for doing their job as the state has asked them to in the past, who does this serve? And we're seeing a new military being formed in front of us. And I would submit that it serves that cause, not the course that you and I are aware of, Brian. Yeah. But I've got to come back to one thing with this, and I'm going to close loop it with what your opening gambit was. I was told by a trident responsible admiral that there was a pact that was known about within the Treasury that runs and manages, and Her Majesty's Treasury, I'm not on about the EU Treasury that's just about to come, that operates and manages and distributes this money to the armed services. There was a pact between Conservative and Labour not to criticise each other over defence cuts because they were both doing it. And who does that suit now? These people are all so inept. Look how it suits. Oh, well, we're so weak and feeble now. We've got all these gaps. What we'll do is we'll go into military union and that'll all be lovey-dovey, won't it? And that'll all be perfect because there won't be any gaps. What a terrific idea. And it'll be cheaper. Look how much money we're going to save. It'll be wonderful. It'll be jammed tomorrow. Look at all this stuff we're going to make. Not. We're at the watershed thing here now. How convenient. They pull a story out the hat like this where you've got a commander of a nuclear submarine having an affair whilst he's on duty. Yeah. This is unprecedented, Brian. Unprecedented.
It's outrageous. And of course, as you've said, nuclear submarines, particularly dangerous vehicles. A warship is one thing, submarine totally different, because somebody makes a mistake, people die. That's the nature of nuclear submarines. But let's have a look at where this policy has been coming from. We'll bring in our old friend Common Purpose. If you go to cpexposed.com website, you can call up some of the documents that we posted many years ago warning of the fact that this pernicious political charity was now training British military in all sorts of things, leadership, how to behave, how to conduct themselves. Have a look at some of these documents here. And then today, thank you very much to the person who pointed out to me that Common Purpose was busy tweeting, that it was doing great work to create future leaders in partnership with the American Express Leadership Academy. Well, how fantastic that we've got a so-called charity training British military that boasts, of course, with its deep relationship with big money, American Express here. But previously, of course, Common Purpose was created by banks. But Julia Middleton, the chief executive, would never reveal which banks. We certainly think Deutsche Bank was a big one, but she would never say. So what is this training about? Well, Common Purpose and American Express are targeting not-for-profit organisations across the world. And it links through to another organisation here called Centre for Creative Leadership, where they're boasting of the tens of thousands of people in the not-for-profit sector that they're now training worldwide. And of course, if you look at the leadership development they're using, this is inevitably based on neuro-linguistic programming. This is very, very dangerous stuff.
Right, let's just quickly mention Yemen. Well, we've been over in Saudi Arabia, apparently. This is Minister for the Middle East, Alistair Burt, who's visiting Riyadh yesterday for bilateral meetings. Or sorry, this is 17th, that's Sunday. Sunday he was over there meeting for bilateral meetings with the governments of Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Of course, he's not meeting with the government of Yemen, because who he's meeting with is the president, so-called President Hadi, who is not really the president of Yemen, and it's not really the Yemeni government. This is the faction of President Hadi, of course, overstayed his welcome in Yemen, ran off to Saudi Arabia whenever he wasn't wanted anymore, and that was the start of the Saudi bombings in Yemen. So speaking after his visit to Riyadh, Burt said that Saudi Arabia is one of our strongest regional allies, and we continue to work closely together on a wide range of important areas. We support the delivery of Saudi Arabia's ambitious reform program, Vision 2030, and we need to resolve the ongoing dispute with Qatar. Central to all of my meetings was the ongoing conflict in Yemen. I made clear my concern that the conflict was now contributing to the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. Well, there you go. But in the meantime, as this news outlet is reporting, London calls on UN to avoid misleading information on Yemen. And I just thought this was a fascinating little insight into the discussions that Burt was having in Saudi Arabia, because he's particularly concerned that the United Nations is getting information from all kinds of people, and that some of that information might be misleading information. In other words, the UN is perhaps not just entirely listening to the British-Saudi rhetoric and British-Saudi narrative on this. they might be getting information that we don't really agree with, like the fact that Hadi isn't really the president of this country and shouldn't really be the president of this country, and that, you know, maybe some people are saying